Mr. Speaker, I beg to second that the Senate do adjourn sine die. Mr. Speaker, this may be probably my last speech in a chamber of parliament. Maybe I'd address the House in other capacities, but this is probably my last speech. Mr. Speaker, I want, first of all, to thank everybody, the senators with whom we have had a wonderful journey in the last 4 years or so, coming to 5 years, and thank the leadership, the majority leader, the deputy, the whips in the majority, the speaker and the deputy speaker, the leadership in the minority. I would have said more about everybody in the leadership, but because of time, I will not say why I thank them specifically, but I think it has been a wonderful journey together. And I hope that in my memories of parliaments that I've served in, the 12th Parliament and this particular Senate, the second Senate, will have a chapter in my book which I'm writing. But, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to say this. Parliament cannot be a house of yes and no. I am afraid that in the parliaments, the last two parliaments, we are almost becoming a parliament of yes and no. That when it comes to the vote, that's when we make judgment of the contributions of both the National Assembly and the Senate. Many parliaments are remembered not by the speeches of those who went away the majority. Many parliaments are characterized by dissenters. And I think this is why John Kennedy wrote a big book about profiles in courage. People who said things that should not have been said at their time. And to that extent, I've enjoyed being in this Senate, that even where we have disagreed, I've taken it in good spirit. Like when we were confronted with the issue of the formula and the debates that took place in this parliament. As a matter of record, it may go as one of the best debates, some of the most brilliant debates of the Senate and the National Assembly. And I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for presiding over those sessions, which were very, very, very critical. And I think when you go back to Bungoma, we will forever thank you for taking us through the Senate at that time. But I want to say this, Mr. Speaker. One, whenever I think about parliaments, I always think about Disraeli, the British Prime Minister, who had a great contestation with another Prime Minister who was called Gladstone. They call each other names, but down in history, they are probably some of the best leaders that have emerged from the House of Commons. Because of the debates, they called each other names. Disraeli was Jewish. Just remember that at the Victorian time, in that parliament, to have a Jew as a prime minister of an Anglo-Saxon nation was not easy. And yet they used to have these wonderful debates. Those who respected Gladstone would call him the grand old man, and Disraeli would call him God's only mistake. And it was all taken in good measure. I remember about Churchill, who became prime minister almost by mistake during the war. And he lived on to be the greatest Englishman alive. He's been voted many times the greatest Briton alive, who came out of necessity. So at the end of the day, what am I trying to say? I think we are going through a very wonderful period that we have had a coalition before, many coalitions, and this time we have not had a formal coalition, but I think this coalition will be remembered, not formally in place, but through a handshake of bringing peace to this country and to bring a new constitutional dispensation. But what I want to say more importantly, which I said today in the morning, the judiciary, and I want to repeat this, the judiciary probably is the most important institution in this country. And I said this morning that probably if Chelagat Mutai was alive today and was a parliamentarian, he would not have been charged, convicted, and jailed for the period that he went to jail. So I want to plead with my colleagues that wherever we go, always remember that the greatest institution to keep our democracy alive is the judiciary. We may disagree with them, but I'm hoping that throughout our lives and the contribution to this country, we must always fight for a free and independent judiciary. In fact, at the founding of the American Constitution and Declaration of Independence, I think the greatest contribution was by Chief Justice Marshall, who in the midst of that victory by Washington was able to stand up in a great decision to make sure the judiciary did not go overboard. My fear is, but I believe the next government probably will have a president who will comply and respect the Constitution. But my greatest fear is that in the midst of victory, sometimes we want to take the judiciary for granted. And I hope that that will not happen. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, we have had this debt ceiling that we have enhanced upwards, making it possible for Kenya to borrow. But I hope that in doing so, the government will behave responsibly, because we can talk about COVID, we can talk about these challenges, but in our nation, the financial discipline has always been lacking. And therefore, if we extend the debt ceiling, which has been growing by leaps and bounds, we hope that there will be responsibility to make sure that although Kenya may be making some strides in the area of infrastructure, but if we don't manage it well, we will not be able to become a free market economy which can guarantee prosperity to the rest of the country. And finally, Mr. Speaker, because many people want to speak, I hope that Kenya will come together and live in the spirit that Kenya is bigger than all of us, and that we can stand and defend each other. However much we disagree, but we'll be able to stand and make politics the business of governance so long as it is practiced in accordance with the rules. But politics, if it's practiced in a way of winning at all costs, we may make the greatest mistakes in the land. And I hope that both the law and institutions will not be made either to victimize or to propel people into positions where they wish to be. I hope that we maintain the rule of law and order and justice for all, because this is how you build a lasting democracy. If you have a system that believes in fighting its enemies at whatever cost, you can never advance. If you have people who are not in government and want to win at all costs, you can never have stability. So, Mr. Speaker, I would wish to leave it there and hope that we meet again in other circumstances. Of course, on the 9th of August this year, there will be an Azimio government. And that government, I think, with the government of the people, by the people, for the people. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Leader of Minority. I now propose the question, which is that pursuant to Standing Orders number 28 and 29, the Senate do adjourn sine die. Senator Sakaja. So long.
Thank you very much.